Hello. I'm filling in for someone else who was going to talk, but this is a subject I've been thinking about for a long time. But I don't think it's really managed well in my mind yet, but still, I'll talk about it today, and I'm sure I'll do it again many times. I want to talk about hatred and the way everything is going in this world. It's very hard not to feel some kind of hatred for somebody or some situation. And I talked about this to somebody before now, and I unfortunately used the word chump because that brought all kinds of immediate, instant complaints and very strong comments about it. So I decided not even to use such a word, just to talk about hatred itself. And I have some lines that people say that hatred is like burning down your own house to get rid of a rat. And hatred, the effects of hatred are so terrible for us. And yet we go ahead and think it's very comfortable or almost pleasurable to hate someone or something. And here's another one I like. Love, friendship, and respect do not unite people as much or as common as hatred for something. So we all hate the way the world is going right now with the bombing of innocent people and the killing of children and things that seem way beyond our ability to comprehend and take care of in some way. And yet I think there is a way to take care of this, even though it doesn't have results that we can point to and say, look, see, this is what happens when we try to change it. I think this is another one by Martin Luther King. He said, let no man pull you down so low as to hate him, which is a good point. And James Baldwin said, hatred is always self-hatred, and there is something suicidal about it. So those are my most interested comments about it. And what I wanted to talk about in the effects of hatred is that most of us don't realize the damaging effect that even 1 minute of hatred can do to our body and mind. And that when I was talking about this, talked to somebody, the first comment he gave was, well, what do you do to deal with it? And I had a long time to think about that. And I think it's when I was about 22, I was smoking a lot. And I was working in a hospital with some girlfriends, and I learned all the damaging things about smoking. And I decided, well, I have to stop. And I tried a number of times, but always I would give up and have the cigarette because it's a very sociable habit. And when you're sitting with friends and everybody pulls out the cigarettes, the impulse to do it is very strong. But I had decided that I was going to stop it. So I took up knitting. And every time I wanted to smoke, I took out my knitting and my needles and sat there with everybody else who was smoking and knit. I knit a very long shawl, very long. It was about 10 feet long. And I sent it to my sister, and she wrote back and said, I love it, but how big do you think I am? So, but I did stop because knitting is also very sociable. And so I just substituted my social desire to smoke with the social desire to do something with my hands instead that was more healthy, and that helped a lot. And I finally did quit, and I haven't spoke since. So that made a big difference to me. And I think when we come up against hatred, or the hatred of people or the hatred of circumstances, we should substitute that hatred for something else. Like the minute you feel the impulse of hatred come up about why is the world this way, or why is this person this way, what can I do? I feel helpless. You can substitute something that's healthy for that negative feeling. For example, you can do a small mantra instead. There are very beautiful mantras for various bodhisattvas, and that's another way, because you don't have to do it out loud for it to be real, but you can say the mantra, put it in place of the emotion, and you'll find that if you do it often enough, eventually, the minute you start the mantra, you'll feel the hatred disappear. So that's how you get rid of hatred, is to substitute it with something healthy instead, and put that impulse aside. And if you do put it aside often enough, it will not have any control over you. And that's the problem with hatred in your emotions, is that if it has free reign, it really does take control of your life. And you don't want to be controlled by hatred, I'm sure. So just look around and find something sociable or friendly that you can substitute immediately in place of it, so that it doesn't control your body or your mind. And what else was I gonna say? I was hoping that you might have questions for me to help me out there.
Well, I can always butt in if you want.
Thank you, I would like that, Mike.
Well, two things. One is I've always thought about getting a t-shirt that says, I hate hate.
And have a big X through it.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm glad you brought this up, because yesterday I was nowhere near being a Buddhist when I saw what was going on. And I guess part of the thing that saved me was that I kept reminding myself, you can't let this do this to yourself, do this to you. But I was just angry. And I think what the problem is possibly the idea of hating something is confused with the idea of caring about something. You know, you see something horrible going on and you get angry because you feel like, in my case, I feel like if I don't get angry, then I'm not paying attention, I don't care. And maybe like what you were saying, that bounces back on me saying, well, look, where do you stand? You know, what can you do? And I finally did the only thing I could do, and that was turn off the TV.
Well, that's a healthy habit.
But how do you, I don't want to use this word, but I'll use it, how do you squash that hatred that builds up when you see something that you are appalled by that shouldn't be happening?
Well, this is one of the things, is like hatred is empty, but we feel something in our body, and so we assume it's real, but it's no more real than the thoughts that come through your mind. And what do you do about thoughts in your mind?
Well, my neighbors hear me telling myself to shut up out loud. Shut up, Mike, shut up. You know, they think I'm crazy. But I've had this talk with you, and I've had this talk with Peter, and it's still one of my biggest things, is that I don't know, I feel, I guess it's helplessness that makes me angry and hate, because you can't stop it, you know, and it's, you know, I've been battling with that ever since I joined the Sangha.
Well, one habit you could do, again, it's like putting a healthy habit in place of a negative one, you can look for the source of anger and hatred in you. Don't look outside, only look inside it for the source of it. And when you find it, do some practice to let it go, like giving up smoking or something. Find some way to put a mantra or reading something, that you like that has to do with it. And it's empty, just like the thoughts are, but it feels so real because of the body. But the thing is, when you see hatred and anger in the world, remember that the world is a mirror to us, and so we can look at it and realize that this is in us. The source of all of this is in us, and we have to fight it in us, not out there.
That's what I was trying to get myself to understand yesterday, was that, why are you angry? And then of course, empathy and compassion toward the people that were getting hurt and stuff. But it was like, I finally realized, and you said it, and Peter said it, is that at the point, it's like, I gotta take care of myself first.
Well, you can cultivate that kind of compassion for others when you're sitting. You can practice with the loving kindness sutra. In fact, if you get so upset by hatred, it's very helpful to just cultivate that reading and the practice of reciting it to yourself, because that's a big way to deal with hatred in you. And if we uproot the source of what's happening everywhere, we can feel the real compassion that we have, not for an empty state, but for our meetings with anybody we come in contact with. We can cultivate that compassion that wants to come out.
Thank you.
I have, so the helplessness part of it, that resonates with me. Helplessness, that's the function of ego, because who's feeling lost? Who feels helpless? For a while, after the election, I felt like I had no agency in the world. But I started asking myself, who has no agency? And it became apparent that my anger was a manifestation of my ego. And it felt out of control. And who feels out of control? Ego. Now, how do a lot of Americans control their ego or feel in control or empowered? There's all these false guns. Guns make us all feel equal and empowered, but it's a false lever, right? There's nothing there. So that it could go that way, or it could go toward compassion. It could go toward compassion to yourself when you see the anger, when you see the hatred, when you feel the lack of agency. The ego wants to seize on power. I want to reinforce this agency in the world, gun, whatever, power, money. Or you could go into the self and feel this and let that go and feel the compassion for these people. And it's so hard to feel it because it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming. The apathy is overwhelming. You can't believe that people are making these decisions. It's overwhelming. But you gotta be there, because that's the place you can help.
Thank you, Spencer. That's a very good point he made about asking yourself, well, who is feeling this? Who is so angry and helpless? That's a very good point.
Well, Matt has his hand up.
Matt? What's it?
Hi, good morning.
Good morning, Matt.
Yes, thank you for bringing up the loving kindness sutta, Jane. It's something that I go back to a lot and which I find very helpful. In particular, wishing all sentient beings happiness. And for me, and that's, I mean, for those I find myself inclined to feel hatred towards, to wish them happiness is not the kind of happiness they may think is actually happiness. Not their kind of happiness. The kind of happiness that I would wish them is the absence of the three poisons. And to do that immediately reverses that feeling of that tension, that hatred. I can feel my breath return. I can feel the tension in my body begin to release, and I no longer feel helpless because I've put that wish out there. I've put that into the ether, so to speak. And if nothing else, it helps me. And so any sense of powerlessness to change the world is shifted and really evaporates. So I just wanted to share that. And again, thank you so much for bringing up the Love and Kindness Sutta. That's it.
Thank you, Matt. I think the idea that to put something else in place of feeling helpless is a good idea. And after you ask yourself, well, who is feeling helpless? Because when you act on it, you act as if you understand. When you're feeling helpless, you are giving reality to the situation by accepting its situation as being real for you. So you don't want to add to that, but you could do that. You could, for example, we have the Loving Kindness Sutra, and there's a small part in there that could be like a mantra that you can say when you feel yourself feeling this anger at this hurt and pain of suffering. You can say this as, may all beings be happy, may they be joyful and live in what? Safety, all beings, whether weak or strong, in high or middle or low realms of existence, near or far. When? Born or to be born, may all beings be happy. You could just say that one small chapter in the whole sutra. And it is some very strong words to keep your compassion flowing towards the suffering and towards yourself being affected by it. Any other questions, Mark?
I think we all have to keep in mind that usually the time we get angry, we're probably looking at a screen or something. Although things do happen in real life, real person anger and stuff like that. But we're looking at a screen and we're looking at a magnification of what's really going on. We're not even looking at reality as we know it, which would be if you're in the park and then you see a big protest, and you see people cracking heads and screaming and ranting and jumping over fences or whatever. That's one thing, but when we look on a screen, an abstracted image that is picked out of all the land's images and put right into your face, and we get angry at that. So we have to, I think, really keep that in mind.
Yeah.
That various reality.
But anyway, I would like you to just say this with me. It's from the Loving Kindness Sutra. It's just perfect, like a small mantra to place in place of anger and frustration and feeling helpless. Okay, it's the Loving Kindness Sutra on page
It's on page 6.
6. And if you get really good at it and you want to do a bigger one, say the Daihi Shindarani, which is the compassion, the Sutra of Compassion. Anyway, the harmony of difference.
Loving
We're going
kindness.
into that?
Loving
No,
kindness.
Go that way.
Page
no.
6.
Page 6, it just says, may all beings be happy, may they be joyous and live in safety. All living beings, whether weak or strong, in high or middle or low realms of existence, small or great, visible or invisible, near or far, born or to be born, may all beings be happy. So just try saying that, but take that little bit and keep it in your pocket. Anytime you feel really frustrated by what's happening in the world, take that out and say it, and replace your feeling of helplessness with this. Any other questions?
I think, Spencer, you had written that.
No, I was just thinking, it takes a small mind to hate. So it takes a small mind to hate another small mind. Because Buddha mind has no room for hatred. So you know you're not living your truest Buddha life when you're hating someone. That's the first thing. I usually do metta when I feel these feelings about someone, so I usually say, may you be happy, may you be filled with loving kindness, may you be safe and protected, may you be at ease. But I always have a problem with the happy, but Matt, you actually helped me with the greed, anger, and delusion, because he's right. We're not wishing them happiness in the Western sense of happiness. We're wishing them the absence of greed, anger, and delusion. So that gives me, I could give that away all day. You know, I was framing it wrong. So thank you, Matt.
I'm glad it helps.
Yeah,
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, I just want to echo some of those things. Like, I think there's a lot of research too on just like how that anger and hatred is really toxic for your body and everything, right? It really just ends up kind of hurting you, tearing you down. I still, something I think we all struggle with on different levels of maybe there's hatred for someone's behavior instead of, them as a person, and it's still hatred, but it's still something I think a lot of people struggle with. Yeah, you might dislike a behavior, but in the end, it still just burdens you and causes you harm.
Would you repeat some of that with a louder voice? I missed it.
Yeah, I missed a little bit.
Sorry, I was saying there's a lot of research on toxic stress with anger and hatred, and I think I've seen that a lot too, just how that ends up hurting you in the end. I've wondered about maybe separating between hating a behavior versus hating the person, but in the end, I think that's still something I'm struggling with. It's a tough thing, right? But yeah, thank you for your talk.
Oh, you, Chris.
Aaron.
Oh, all right, that's right.
Well, thank you. This is an important topic because it can help us clarify our own paths. I hear that there's nothing except love, and everything else is the attempt to separate from love as part of the creative process. So hatred would not be anything. It's something, as you said earlier, that it's not really anything. It's something what we're overlaying different interpretations. Maybe we're seeing something that affects us. Now, I don't put anger and hate in the same category. Anger is a trigger emotion. It just says, "Oh, look, something's absurd, something's wrong, something has to change." And it can be shocking. It's like a slap in the face. That's what anger is. Everything after that is self-judgment. This is what I've heard and understood. And all that self-judgment turns into these other things that we call hate, we call despair, it's basically, we're traveling down the path towards darkness and away from the truth, which is there's only one truth. When anger sparks, it says, this is something that you don't love about yourself, and then the rest of it is a reaction to how I feel about the situation. I hate seeing these violent things. I hate seeing somebody run a red light. I hate, because in my mind, I know there might be a better way from my own experience. Now, I don't know what that person is going through that's experiencing these things. I don't know what kind of despair or revenge or desperate grasp for life these people are going through to put them into these situations. And we are only given, like Mark said, a tiny slice when we see things on the screen of the reality of what's going on. We don't see a mom in the background who maybe lost all of her kids, and so she's out there fighting and whacking somebody on the head, which is a natural thing. We don't see maybe kids without parents anymore because the parents have been killed, and I'm just assuming you're talking about war. But these events go, they're more insidious when they're not acted out on such levels, because then they start to seed within us this stuff, and it's within me that this stuff is seeded. It is, I don't know what's going on in anybody else's life. I only know that my perception is that it's affecting me, and unless I take the time to say, well, who's affected by this? Who's seeing this situation, then look at, kind of separate it out, give myself a little distance, which is not easy to do when you're suddenly seeing something that's triggering you. But to just allow a moment of breath, take a deep breath. Whoa, interesting. Just kind of pull back, because then I can gather the thought of the mantra. Then I can gather the thought, because one thing I've noticed in life is that a lot of people hold their breath, and so you're holding in the stress of it, and as soon as you take that deep breath in, then you have that opportunity to instantly reset. It won't take you to the place of peace, but it'll show you the opportunity for the path of peace, of a peaceful warrior rather than the violent warrior. That was just mine.
I'd like to add something. I liked what you said about we don't know what drove people to do things that makes us angry at them, and what type of life they had and stuff. And it's like, that's kind of a key thing, in the sense that, these people may have gone through something that triggers them to do this. It doesn't justify it, but it gives at least the understanding that this is why this is happening, type thing. And I think that, I like what you said about that. I've heard that said somewhere before, where we don't know why these people are the way they are. Don't like what they do, but something in their past that they're dealing with that's maybe making them angry and stuff, makes them act out this way. And so it's like having that compassion to say, okay, this, we need to take that person in, which is the hardest thing to do sometimes, to say, okay, I don't know why they're doing this. It's not productive. But maybe, you know, something happened in their life and I need to show them a compassionate thing. And it's very hard to be compassionate toward people that you really don't like. You know,
And I say you could simply be compassionate for yourself for realizing that.
it's, yeah, and it's a hell of a koan that we're all living through right now. Excuse my language.
And also, there are ways to overcome hatred with loss and other things. For example, one of my favorite stories was about a black woman whose son was shot down, and by some friend. Excuse me. And she grieved for a while, and finally she said that this isn't helping anything. So she went to the prison to talk to the man who killed her son. And after that, she went many times to talk to him. And she got involved in his life. And then she petitioned for him to be, paroled, yeah. And she said, I'll take him into my home and take responsibility for him. And he came and lived with her. And he said he felt remorse for having killed her son, and now she had no one to depend on. So he said he would take her son's place and take care of her, which he did. He got a job and turned all his money over and got everything for her and took care of her. And he said later that she actually gave him a life, and before that he had none. So I think it is possible for anybody to forgive and let compassion rule everything. And that's what she did. And she took somebody who lost their life as well as taking a life, and she gave him back a life. And I think that's really possible for everyone to do. We're not even involved in first-hand killing, but we see it enough that we feel like we are. So we just have to keep cultivating compassion with breath and sitting. And when you feel it getting over you, please chant that small mantra for the sake of yourself and others. Okay, I guess it's.
Spencer, shall we start service? Okay.
Thank you for listening and helping me out.
No problem. Thank you for helping us out.